Thank you for tuning in to this very special episode of Mondo Agora on the Voluntary Virtues Network. Today we are going to be talking about technology and the future. First thing we're going to do is we're going to set through a couple audio clips that I found on YouTube. These are very good clips and they really set the mood. The only problem is they may take up a lot of the time we're having today, so I'm going to might cut my podcast in half or just do part of it or something, I don't know. But I'll take over at one point and we'll go from there, probably talking about the Ocular Rift, which is a very cool technology that's been out kind of in development for a while now, and it has a lot of potential, which I'll kind of go into a little bit. Anyway, enjoy, and the links to these actual video clips will be in the show notes. They're all on YouTube, so I figured it'd be alright. Check them out, guys. Peace.
One of the things that we're asking people and trying to explore in the film is not just the explicit anarchism of the individualists of Warren and Tucker and Spooner, but to find out whether there's kind of an implicit anarchism in American traditions and American political history. What's your feeling about that?
Well, I think there's an implicit anarchism in any of the American tendencies that have organized people in opposition to the state. And I think co-ops might have reflected this notion, organizing people not only in opposition to the state, in effect, but in opposition to the major economic movement of the time. I think, as a matter of fact, just in the romantic view of the American character, there's an anarchist tendency. It is flawed by one thing, the abstraction of patriotism. People who will damn the government from morning till night and oppose the state in a million and one ways will, at times of national crisis, become incredibly patriotic and begin to say they will do anything for the state, and they begin to talk of duty, service, sacrifice, all of the words that are the worst words in the world, it seems to me, in a human sense. They begin talking about. Now, I don't know why this is, unless it is that these are such good-hearted people that they really believe that the American state is totally different from any other state, and it's certainly somewhat different, and that they feel that it is important to preserve. They feel they're preserving the country, but the only language that is available is to preserve the state. I have an idea that one of these days there will be another language in which we can talk about preserving the country, the landscape, the neighborhoods, the people in the communities, without talking about preserving the state. At which point there'll be a lot of radical farmers, factory workers, and small town residents in this country.
If you take history on this planet as starting at midnight, and you assume the life of the planet is 15 billion years, which is the estimated life of a G-type star, then it is now 8 o'clock in the morning, and it's time for us to wake up, because we've pretty much been operating on autopilot up until now. And there are signs of planetary awakening. Domesticated primate psychology remains pretty much the same as it was in the Paleolithic, but one sees increasing evidences of mutations. There was only one Buddha 2,500 years ago. Now you meet 5 or 10 Buddhas in every city you go to. Knowledge, wherever it's discovered, is traveling over the whole world faster and faster. The possibility of changing consciousness was discovered in the Orient 2,500 years ago at least. Probably it's older than that. But techniques were discovered to quiet the mind, pacify the mind, remove emotional compulsions, and these were organized into the science of yoga. As John Lilly says, yoga is the science of the East, as science is the yoga of the West. Science is a yoga too. Science is a way of trying to reach an objective level in which your emotional compulsions and prejudices aren't twisting all the facts to fit in with your favorite reality tunnel. The scientific worldview grew up in the West between 1500 and 1750, largely due to mystics who were known as Hermeticists. This Hermetic scientific revolution saw theology as its enemy, and there was no conflict between Hermeticism and science. They were both based on experiment, find out what happens if you do this, and they were both opposed to the authority of the church. Shortly after 1600, this began to split, and the Hermetic tradition faded into the background, and we developed for the first time in history a science that had absolutely no connection with anything except pure reason. The Hermetic tradition was that there is no such thing as pure reason. You've got to first work on your own perceiving apparatus to correct your prejudices, and the scientist is not separate from what the scientist observes, and the general yogic attitude that you are the master who makes the grass green. Western science lost that insight, and from Newton onwards, we had the idea that it doesn't matter who you are. If you follow scientific procedure, you'll find the truth. This began to break down after 1900 due to Sigmund Freud, who pointed out that even scientists are human beings and may have neuroses, and that scientific theories may be elaborate rationalizations for neuroses, and the influence of Karl Marx, who pointed out that no matter what you're theorizing about, it's a mirror of your economic status and what your economic goals are. And then anthropologists started coming back with reports about alternative reality tunnels, showing that no matter what reality tunnel you live in, the world will organize itself in your perceptions to be compatible with that reality tunnel. So science began to have data to look at science itself critically. That's how intelligence increases, when intelligence looks at intelligence and criticizes intelligence. So we got to the point where we could look at science and say science is the product of people. People are doing this, and their prejudices are getting into it. And it's not just enough to say I will be objective. You've got to learn to change yourself from the inside out before you can even begin to approximate toward objectivity. How do you do that? Well, it took a while to begin to find answers to that. The big change came when Albert Hofmann went for a bicycle ride one day after experimenting with ergot derivatives. Albert Hofmann, after accidentally ingesting LSD, went through a profound experience in 1942, which he did not put into words until 1982. It took him 40 years. He was educated as a classical chemist with a classical scientific background and assumed that there was such a thing as an objective observer and so on. So it took him 40 years to figure out what LSD meant. And in 1982, he wrote an essay on the 40th anniversary of the discovery of LSD, in which he says, the main thing I've learned from LSD is that there is no objective reality separate from us. All there are the realities that our nervous systems construct out of the signals they receive. This became obvious to others due to the things that were happening in quantum physics from 1900 on. In the doubling of knowledge between 1900 and 1950, physicists discovered that the atomic world is just not describable in terms of Aristotelian logic. For one thing, you can't describe anything on the quantum level accurately unless you include the observer in your picture. So quantum physics turned out to be saying exactly the same thing that the psychedelic revolution was saying, that there is no objective reality separate from us. All we know is the reality that we are co-creators of, the reality perceived, conceived, put together by our nervous systems. And at this point, it becomes obvious that intelligence can be raised, consciousness can be altered, nothing is static. All we've got to do is learn how to change our nervous systems, and we can go to wider and wider reality tunnels and bigger levels of perception and so on. And so there was a great deal of drug research, and a lot of people were getting a lot of radical ideas, and so the government made it illegal, which is the natural thing to do if you're a politician. The last thing you want is intelligence increase. So then some others started saying, well, okay, they won't let us investigate drugs, but now that we know it's possible to change consciousness, let's see the other techniques that they will let us investigate. Nobody has made pranayama illegal yet because it would be impossible to enforce. Well, you just have to read a book on yoga and learn how to breathe through alternative nostrils, and you find you go into an entirely different consciousness state. Then you can go back to your ordinary consciousness, think about that state, then go back into that state and think about your ordinary consciousness, and already you're in I squared. You're in intelligence studying intelligence. You're finding out how your nervous system works. So with each decade since the 1960s, we are moving more and more to the place where we can change our nervous systems, change our reality tunnels, and make bigger and bigger reality tunnels. Once you look down at your reality tunnel, whether your reality tunnel is Ohio, Methodist, or New York Jewish, or Marin County hippie, or Tokyo capitalist Zen Buddhist, or Iranian Muslim fundamentalist. Once you get to the level where you're outside your reality tunnel looking down at it, you can compare reality tunnels, and then you're on a higher level of intelligence already, because you're no longer a conditioned mechanism just following the reality tunnel that was accidentally imprinted or conditioned, and you can start choosing between reality tunnels.
Now, as you know, biology runs on genes, and genes are the units of meaning of heredity. But we could make a model of the informational environment that is represented by culture, and in fact this is done. A word has been invented, meme, M-E-M-E, meme. A meme is not the smallest unit of heredity. A meme is the smallest unit of meaning of an idea. Ideas are made of memes. And I think the art community might function with more efficiency in the production of visionary aesthetic breakthroughs if we would think of ourselves as an environment modeled after the natural environment, where we as artists are attempting to create memes which enter an environment of other memes that are in competition with each other, and out of this competition of memes, ever more appropriate, adapted, and suitable ideas can gather and link themselves together into higher and higher organisms. Now, in order for this to happen, there is an obligation upon each one of us to carry our ideas clearly, because in the same way that a gene must be copied correctly to be replicated, or it will cause some pathological mutation, a meme must be correctly replicated, or it will cause a pathological mutation. For instance, I would say what the Nazis did to Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy was a miscopied meme became a toxic mutation inside a culture.
It is such an exciting time to be alive historically. I like to, begging permission from the Chinese, borrow an old saying of theirs, which is appropriate since they're probably going to own this country soon enough. May you be blessed to live in interesting times. And it seems that humanity is on the verge of so many great things. So many incredible historical trends are converging right now. I mean, just look at life expectancy, look at technology, look at what we're capable of. The message of liberty is of love and empowerment. And we shouldn't be sitting on the sidelines, shaking our heads, because we've realized something that others haven't. We should be right there in the game, taking charge and showing people that there is a better way. That freedom is the greatest thing we can do for our own security, because it is the greatest thing that we can do to provide for our own prosperity. And anybody who studied Austrian economics, who understands the free market, the basic concept that when two humans interact freely in a free exchange, it's because they feel that they both benefit. This is the foundation of capitalism. And when you take that away, when you introduce violence into the equation, inevitably that possible ideal, that potential of dealing with each other, of interacting for mutual benefit at all times, is compromised. We are falling short of our possibilities every single day simply because we accept force and violence in society. And that is subtracted from what we are capable of technologically, what we are capable of in prosperity and producing a quality of life for ourselves and for our children and creating a better world for the generations to come. But maybe it's futile. Maybe if you take this view, maybe if you share this idea that I've embraced, if you share this way of looking at human history, it's easy to say, well, then it doesn't matter what we do. Maybe it's all futile. As activists, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe the next generation is going to be libertarian anyways because they have the tools in front of them, and the logic and the reason and the ability to do things that we never could. Imagine what we're going to have in 5 to 10 years. Just look that far out. Who doesn't want to own themselves? Who doesn't want to be free? Who doesn't want to meet their fellow human beings with the love, faith, and respect that is essential to maintaining a free society? Government is like this vestigial organ of social violence, soon to be amputated and cast aside as the useless, horrid, pus-filled bleach that it is. Every one of you got the message of liberty in kindergarten. You don't hit, you don't steal. And then in church you might have learned, you don't kill. And when you did, it wasn't, don't steal unless you're an IRS agent. It wasn't, don't hit unless you have a badge and a gun. It wasn't, thou shalt not kill unless you're wearing a uniform and Barack Obama tells you to go kill people. Those were moral absolutes, and we have carved out this exception for government, this little area of moral exception, where we have instituted all of the worst of human nature. As I said, the vestigial institution of violence, of our primitive instincts, of our inability to convince each other that there is a better way, to meet each other with logic and reason, as opposed to force and violence. Government cannot stop this movement. Government cannot stop the inevitable course of humanity, because humanity marches on. The development of a free society is our destiny as a species, and it is inevitable. They cannot stop it. So you only get to decide what side you're going to be on. And once you do, once you choose freedom, you know you can't go back to sleep. When you wake up to the reality of what we are as a species and where we are going, you can't help but be compelled to help take us to this next level. So in this state of awareness, with this broader perspective, the question I find myself grappling with, is it time? Is humanity ready for the message of liberty? Or perhaps there are too many who are still stuck in the cycles of abuse and violence of the past, who are unable to see reason and logic, who are unable to get past the paradigm of statism, who will go to their graves. There are people alive today who will go to their graves and never get this message, who will never understand freedom, who will never have an opportunity to be a part of what I see as the completion of this phase of human evolution, when we get past treating each other like animals and we start treating all of us universally like human beings. So should we stand back and wait for the ideas to sell themselves? Or should we stand up, take charge, and lead the Lovolution?
So, why am I talking about humanism and this Ocular Rift thing, stuff like that? Well, the way I see it out of theory, okay? Things get written in science fiction before they ever become a reality. Almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, people think that science fiction predicts the future, but in reality, I believe that science fiction kind of creates the future, because it puts this idea out there. It's out there in the ether, if you wish. And people pick up on this idea. Smart people. And you think about it, like, can I make this happen? Is this possible? Think of all the impossible things that have come along since you have been alive. Okay? I remember remember talking to my grandparents and finding out the first time they ever saw a color television, or was it a television at all? I don't remember. It's when they were out on a date together. Like the first time they ever went out, their first date, they saw either a color television or a television that was one of the first ever, I guess. That is some shot. I don't know. One of those two. I mean, can you imagine how things have changed? And this has been something a long time coming. Anybody who's a gamer has dreamed of being in the game, like kind of physically there. And everybody's kind of seen these half-assed attempts, you know, like way back in the day they had the Virtual Boy, or I think that's what it was called. It was like black and red. It was a headset you wore and it gave people headaches. And it didn't really do too well because it gave people headaches and it was just like black and red. It wasn't perfect. It was a decent attempt, and you could actually find them really cheap at times. It'd probably be really expensive now. Probably should have bought one, saved it, you know. Then can't go back in time yet, right? Okay, so you've seen they had some pretty cool ones. Occasionally you'll see reporters doing TV specials on them or something, or you'll find some reports on YouTube where these people go and they got this huge room set up, and you go into the room and there's this simulator and you're able to go in there and it's kind of like you're actually there. It's kind of 3D-ish, and it's pretty cool. And you also see this idea popping up in TV shows. Like there was an X-Files episode like way back in the early 90s where people got in a room like that, and it was more of a real life virtual reality thing, which we're still trying to create, you know, put people there. So those rooms were impractical. It's like the first computers, you know, they were so large the computer itself would take up an entire room, and they didn't really do too well. I mean, they didn't do much of anything. They didn't do almost anything but calculate numbers, I think. They ran off programs with these punch cards. Anyway, that's kind of where we're moving away from with this virtual reality stuff. We have already started to evolve, and the first almost true kind of available thing that's like that now is the Ocular Rift. You know, they have, I think, 2 development packages that have been released, and these things have kind of showed a vast improvement in the frame rate, the graphics, and everything. And from what I'm seeing, it actually puts you there. The first exposure I've had to this was this video of elders being exposed to the Ocular Rift. And this wasn't that long ago I watched this video. And I recommend it. Because you people think about, you know, this virtual reality stuff, they think, oh, it's going to be for video games, it's really cool. And it is. You know, but, you know, they had these elders that were there, and for some reason, elders just have a sad attitude around them, it seems, sometimes. It's like they're kind of waiting for death in a way. It sounds terrible. Almost ageist. But anyway, they were offered a chance to try this device. They put it on, and they were transported to these places that were like, oh, you're almost, I don't know, Greece or something, walking around the Parthenon, or, you know, walking around a waterfall or something. You're just kind of seeing these sights that are pretty cool, and it made them really happy. And it made me think that people that are in wheelchairs, never got a chance to walk, can kind of experience traveling and exploring different places. And it would seem like it's actually them doing it. You know, it's not a video game. They're not looking at a screen. And I found that very impressive, and the potential of such a thing. Even though the graphics weren't perfect, because it was like right there in your face, it kind of still put you there. It was kind of what we've been looking for, you know. this is where we've been trying to go for years. You know, not the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox One, where it's the same thing as the, you know, the PlayStation 3 almost. There's hardly a difference. There's some differences, obviously, and there's an almost really futuristic vibe and look to the Xbox One that tries to flirt with going into the future in a way, but it also has a very creepy, totalitarian look to it as well. It sees you all the time. Big Brother. Who knows if the CIA can hack that? The FBI can look at you through your computer camera. You know, they can probably look at you through your Xbox. And who knows what they can do with this? There's a whole bunch of fear going around about people being afraid of what the government's going to do with this technology, or if they're going to be able to brainwash people. But this is a technology that's going to happen, and it's got such great potential. Some of the games, I've spent like a couple of hours looking around a bunch of these videos of people playing these crazy games. There's some of the weirdest stuff out there. There's sex games out there, and that means that it's going to really take off. Why is it the first thing I bring up? Because I just watched one of the most horrifying videos on YouTube. It was weird. Okay, but industries where video games and porn get involved or what take off. So it's a very good sign for this device, is what I'm saying. There's these really out there horror games. Now the graphics on these things, they have been designed specifically for the
interface, and the entire database of the culture could be placed there. You see, really what computers are doing is they're making what we call the collective unconscious conscious. All data, all images are potentially accessible through the network. And, you know, I'm still getting used to the idea of the network myself. Like, I keep thinking, oh, I have this timeline. I could get somebody's chronology and put it at my website. And then I remember, no, all I have to do is point to their website. I don't have to copy or move anything. If there is one list, that's all the world needs. Anybody else who needs that list can point to it from their website. So the speed at which new structures can be created is astonishing. I mean, almost literally overnight, you can build a website and begin to point at other websites and bring resources into yours. This is a technology which is going to turn out to not be what people think it is. It's going to be a technology for showing each other the inside of our heads, for showing each other our dreams. You know, one thing I didn't talk about in the main part of the lecture is that psychedelics are catalysts for language. They speed up and catalyze the language formation process. And a culture cannot evolve any faster than its language evolves. And it cannot be any more glued together than the bandwidth that its languages will tolerate. And so what this technology that is putting in place is going to mean is the way in which it will dissolve boundaries is by making us transparent to each other. I mean, I can imagine a child of the future. We all bring home our drawings to stick on refrigerators and things like that. In the future, we won't stick them on refrigerators. We will stick them in our website. And everything will go into our website. And by the time we're 25 or something, our website will be the size of the American Museum of Natural History. And you can wander through it. And as a gesture of intimacy, you can invite someone else to wander through it. Well, that's who you are. It's your imagination. And I think, in a sense, I've said at times that the cultural enterprise is an effort to turn ourselves inside out. We want to put the body into the imagination, and we want the imagination to replace the laws of physics. With these technologies, we can probably do that, but it'll have to run on psychedelic design principles, or it's certain to be a mess. Yeah.